When I first started to shape ideas that eventually became my upcoming book, The 5 Rings of Delivery, I wasn't interested in creating another Agile framework or another delivery manifesto. What I wanted was a way of seeing something deeper, something that cut through the noise of modern organizations. And Musashi gave me that lens. His Book of 5 Rings speaks the language of swordsmanship, but underneath it sits a universal pattern for navigating complexity. And much of the book that I'm writing and the Insight Rings game that I'm developing alongside it come from applying these principles to real problems that teams face today. The decision fog, the system constraints, the political winds, and the clutter that slows delivery down. But this video stands alone. You don't need to read the book or play the game. You just need to bring your own experience and let these rings challenge how you think about work. Let's start with the Earth ring. Earth, know the smallest things and the biggest things, the shallowest things and the deepest things. Earth is the foundation. In both swordsmanship and delivery is the stance you take before making any move. Musashi's insistence on understanding the smallest and biggest things is a provocation to modern teams who rush past fundamentals. Teams who jump into sprints before they've clarified the outcomes. They refine stories without agreeing on what done actually means. They measure velocity while ignoring whether anything meaningful is actually being delivered. In the book, the Earth Ring is the grounding chapter, the discipline of establishing clarity so strong that everything else becomes easier. And when I built the Earth mechanics into the Insight Rings game, that's exactly what they test. Players who skip the foundations will suffer for it. The board punishes vagueness and rewards clarity. In real life, Earth is of the same discipline. It's a steadying force that says, before we rush, before we react, before we build, we should stand. We look. We understand. Next is water. There's more than one way to the top of the mountain. Water is adaptability. Musashi refused to commit to a single style. He flowed around opponents, changing rhythm and shape as needed. Modern organizations often talk about agility, but yet behave in ways that are the opposite of water. They lock teams into the same ceremonies, the same templates, the same cadence, even when the nature of work demands something entirely different. In my book, The 5 Rings of Delivery, the water chapter is where we dismantle the myth that one framework fits all contexts. And in the Insight Rings game, water tokens reward experimentation and punish rigidity. If you cling to a single approach, you lose momentum. If you adapt, you create new paths. Water will ask you a simple question. Are you shaping the work or are you letting the work shape you? Next, fire. Do nothing which is of no use. Musashi's fire ring is the art of decisive action, cutting down what slows you down. If you showed Musashi the average delivery manager's calendar, he would assume we were under siege by an army of meetings, status calls with no status, ceremonies that generate no insights, refinements that inflate the backlog instead of clarifying it. Fire is the opposite of busy work. In the book, the fire chapter is blunt. If an activity does not move the work forward, it's a distraction. And in the game, fire is literally the cutting mechanism, events where players must strip away unnecessary options to keep the system lean. Bringing fire into your leadership is not about speed, it's about intention. Do nothing which is of no use. It's not productivity slogan, it's a warning. Every useless action compounds into organizational friction. Fire will clear the noise so that movement can become natural again. Next is wind. From one thing, know 10,000 things. Wind is Musashi's exploration of other schools, learning their strengths, studying their weaknesses, understanding the wider landscape. In delivery, wind is your organizational awareness. It's your ability to see beyond your team and notice how the wider system shapes your work. Because really, most blockers are not local. They're systemic. Delivery latency, overlapping mandates, shared people, clashing incentives. The wind chapter of the book really goes into this idea that real delivery is not about sprint mechanics. It's about reading the wind of the organization and positioning the team accordingly. And in the Insight Rings game, wind shifts the environment. It exposes players to constraints they maybe did not anticipate, mirroring the reality that most teams inhabit daily. When you learn to see the system, you stop treating symptoms and you start to treat the causes. Next is void. Void is where nothing exists. The void is a place of true potential. Void is maybe the hardest ring to grasp. In Musashi's writing, it represents the space beyond technique, the openness where insight occurs. Modern organizations fear the void. They fill every gap with a process, every quiet moment with a meeting, every roadmap with a feature. But the void is where genuine discovery can happen. In the book, this chapter is the heart of the message. You cannot deliver innovation if you've eliminated all emptiness. And in the Insight Rings game, void tokens create breathing space, moments when players can rethink their assumptions, redesign their approach, or pivot entirely. Void is possibility. It's the spike that you weren't sure whether you had time for. It's the prototype that nobody asked for, but everyone needed. It's the question that reveals the flaw in the entire plan. Void is not chaos, it is potential. As a leader, you have to protect the void so your team can create things that are worth delivering. So those were the 5 ancient lenses we can use to look at modern delivery. Where does this leave us? Earth stabilizes foundations. Water adapts to reality. Fire cuts through the noise. Wind reveals the system, and void creates a space for an insight. And these rings are ancient, yes, but they're also the most accurate description I've found of what it means to lead delivery in modern organizations. They form the core of the book that I'm writing, The 5 Rings of Delivery, and they power the mechanics of the Insight Rings game that teams can use to explore these practical ideas together. But even without the book and without the game, these rings stand alone. If you hold them lightly, not as rules but as ways of seeing, you'll find that your decisions become clearer, your team's calmer, and your work becomes more meaningful. Thanks for watching. Make sure you hit like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. As always, stay agile.